welcome to the February 28th, 2023 Parks and Recreation monthly meeting. The first order of business is a roll call, please.
Chair Greenfield,
Here.
Vice Chair Lemaire,
Here.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Here.
and Commissioner Oche.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, that's 6 present.
And Chair, you're muted.
Thank you, sir. Next, please, we will look to adopt a resolution authorizing the use of teleconferencing for the PRC meeting during the COVID-19 state of emergency, as we've been doing for many months now. Can I get a motion to move forward with this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. And can we get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche.
Yes, please.
Chair, that's a 6-0 vote.
Thank you. That's great. Next is the opportunity for public comment. If anyone would like to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, please give a speaker card if you are at Chambers today, or raise your hand via Zoom. I can see, and Javad, I'll let you go ahead and run this. I can see we have at least one hand raised. I don't know if you have speaker cards as well.
Nate,
You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
we have one speaker online. Nate Blair, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you so much, Chair Greenfield and commissioners. I'm just calling to give a word of thanks to the commission, and particularly to Commissioner Freeman. I called in a couple months ago seeking some assistance in helping the city coordinate with Palo Alto Little League regarding the maintenance of Hoover Field. And in short order, Commissioner Freeman reached out to me, and after some meetings between the city and the league, we came to what I think is a really positive resolution and a really great example of how this commission can serve its community. So thank you so much for all your help with that.
Thank you. Is that the end of a?
There are no more hands raised.
Yep. Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Does anyone have anything to suggest? And I will observe to commissioners, since I am remote, it's a little hard for me to see if someone has a raised hand, if someone's wanting to speak. So raise your hands if you do desire to speak. And looks like there is nothing to discuss, so we will move forward with the approval of minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes from our January 24th meeting? If anyone does have any comments, why don't you go ahead and speak, please? And seeing as there are apparently no comments, could we get a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. And could we have a roll call vote to approve the minutes, please?
Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche,
Yes, please.
and Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Thank you. Next up is the department report. Assistant Director Darren Anderson, please.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioners. Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. I'll start with an update on recruitment, as we usually do. We held job interviews today for our vacant park maintenance position. So hopefully we'll be making an offer soon on that, filling it. We have job offers going out for our vacant budget analyst position for community services. And we have job offers out for 2 of the 3 hourly open space. Strong winds and the snow caused a number of challenges in the hills, in particular around Foothills and Page Mill Road, number of downed trees and vehicle accidents. One of the troubles from the previous storm was that the tennis courts at Cubberley had blown over, and we've repaired those. So those are back open as of last week. Also, there had been storm damage to the Eastern Fern Loop Trail, and that's been repaired and is open again. The Cubberley and Greer Park field renovations were completed last week, so they're closed for renovations, meaning they're seeded and fertilized to give a chance for the turf to rebound from the excessive use, and those are now in good shape and open. And the baseball field at the Baylands Athletic Center will be opening next week by March 3rd. An update on the Cubberley Gym. After the city performed some testing, the environmental consultant that we had used previously came back, did a follow-up assessment, and concluded that the damage was not as widespread as originally thought to the gym floors and walls. So that was good news. Staff's obtaining a new repair quote for the revised recommendations. And although the extent of the work is reduced, it'll still include repairs to remediate the crawl space, repair the gym floor, repair the gym walls, and redesign and construct a new heating system. I don't know the timeframes yet, but I understand Public Works will be moving forward with getting a contractor to do the hazardous material remediations, which could take up to 6 to 12 months. So I hope to have more information on timeframes for you soon, but that's what I've got so far. Just a reminder about the Rinconada Pool, that it's going to be closed for the replastering project. That's March 6th through April 20th. And they had a note online, and this was mentioned during the presentation to you last time, that all swimmers are invited and welcome to drop in or register for membership at Burgess Pool in Menlo Park and swim alongside their lap and master swimmers. There's an upcoming community meeting to discuss the proposal for the Recreation Wellness Center. This community is invited, and of course the commission's invited, to learn about and provide input on the proposal for a new Recreation Wellness Center in Palo Alto at a community feedback session. This will be Tuesday, March 7th, 6:30 p.m. at Mitchell Park Community Center in the El Palo Alto room. And an email with this invite was emailed to the commissioners today. The topics include discussion about location, facility amenities and programming, and there'll be an online survey that opens on March 7th for those who are unable to attend. The Palo Alto Art Center is hosting their annual Family Day event. This is Sunday, March 5th from 2 to 4:30 p.m. It's a day of fun and learning and art with hands-on activities and tables from local environmental nonprofits. The event's free, and activities are designed to be appropriate from everyone from age 5 to adults. And more information on that one's available under the city's homepage under calendar. Last night, City Council approved the Parks and Recreation Commission e-bike recommendation, along with a few additions, which will likely end up being on the commission's work plan next year. Those additions pertain to the Baylands and the Restero preserves. And in particular, it's to look at whether we should consider lowering the speed limits, the trail speed limits, consider if we have some trails that shouldn't have bikes or horses on them due to impacts to trail conditions, habitat, and wildlife. And lastly, to consider adding bike racks at trailheads where bike parking is lacking. And just a reminder, the updated ordinance and regulations will become effective April 13th. The Measure E recommendation that our commission sent to council is scheduled to be reviewed tentatively on April 3rd. So that will not be on the consent calendar. That will be a discussion topic. Their agendas have been very full. And that's why it got pushed out a little bit. So April 3rd is the tentative date for that. If it changes, I'll be sure to keep you updated. You might recall that the commission had reviewed a park improvement ordinance for the Valley Water Tide Gate project some time ago, and they had plans to begin September 2024. Well, that project got put on hold while they look into the opportunity for the Tide Gate structure replacement work to be incorporated into a future project with the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Phase 2 project. And they're planning to proceed with the two-phased approach for the Tide Gate. And the plan is phase 1 is aimed at to address the concerns about the current conditions of the Tide Gate structure. And phase 1 would be to design and construct a seismic retrofit and rehabilitation to the existing Tide Gate to extend the service of its life a little bit longer. And phase 2 is to work with the Army Corps for this long-range replacement project and see how they can do it. And the reason for the change is really, it came down to a significant increase in construction costs, largely associated with excavation and increased cost of fill, the control of water, and biological monitoring permit requirements. So it was really a funding issue that caused them to defer this. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Thank you, Darren. Our first order of business is the sewer line rehabilitation project. Darren?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's my pleasure to introduce the Public Works Manager from the Water Quality Control Plant, James Allen. James, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
I'm joined with Mike Randall, our consultant from Jacobs Engineering. He's the project manager. And Sue Chin, our project engineer, who's the project manager for the city of Palo Alto. They're here to help me answer any questions you might have. I'm going to share my screen and find this presentation. You see my screen?
Not yet.
Hmm.
And yeah, you know what, Jamie, we could share that for you. Javad's got a copy. Oh, looks like it's popping up.
Okay. Let me go to presentation mode. Okay, the pipeline, the 72-inch joint intercepting sewer was built in 1970, and it uses they used an open cut construction method, and it's 60-inch and 72-inch diameter reinforced concrete pipe about 25 feet below the ground. It's just under 2 miles in length, and it flows sewage to the treatment plant by gravity from a metering station at San Antonio Road. The lowest 2,400 feet of the pipe near the treatment plant is 72-inch diameter, and it's severely corroded and needs rehabilitation. This is an aerial view of the pipe. As I said, it starts at San Antonio Road and goes behind a business park. Then it goes under the flood control basin, underneath Matadero Creek, and then it curves and goes along the landfill, the closed landfill and the salt marsh, and then approaches the treatment plant and goes to our headworks near the north end of the plant. And they found that the lowest section is most severely corroded and needs work now in a phase 1 project. And the section in green is about just over a mile long. It needs rehabilitation in the future, but probably 10 years or more out. So the good news is we don't have to rehabilitate all of it, but we do have to take care of the lower section. And this is why the sewage gases over the last 50 years have attacked the concrete, and you can see exposed aggregate. The first layer of reinforcing steel has been corroded away. And if we don't reline this pipe is in danger of further corrosion and collapsing. from losing structural strength in the crown of the pipe. Consultants evaluated methods and found that an open cut trench was is not feasible. And there's trenchless methods now that are called cured in place pipe, where a pipe, a liner is brought inside the pipe and cured with hot water to form a new pipe on the inside liner, inside of the pipe after it's been cleaned out. And so that cured in place pipe method is the method that we're going to be using. This gives you a view of some of the equipment that's used to do that without having to cut open the earth for a long trench. It is a long pipe liner that's impregnated with resin, and it's pulled into the manhole. And then, like I said, they put hot water in there, and it hardens while the main sewage that would be coming through the pipe is bypassed above ground in the pipes. Our utilities department uses the cured in place pipe method. They've done about 4 miles of this pipelining on pipes from 6-inch to 42-inch out of their 200 some miles of pipe that they maintain. And they've done some on East Bay Shore Road, Embarcadero Road, the Harbor Road out here to avoid having to do open cut trenching. Mountain View did a 36-inch pipe relining last spring, and we went out there and took some pictures. You can see here, they kept their activities in a paid parking lot, and they work closely with their park staff, just as we've been doing with our park staff. They set up fencing and for protection of the animals and to keep the public out of sensitive areas. And they had enclosed equipment that was operating at less than 86 decibels at 50 feet from the source. We're going to be a little less than that. Can you see some of the equipment? These are some details of the project. We're going to inspect and clean the existing pipe after we set up the bypass, and we'll be lining the pipe from manhole 4 to the plant, but then the bypass is set up at the manhole just upstream from manhole 5 to the headworks. The project takes 3 to 5 months of field work. Next dry season, next summer, spring, summer 2024. The bypassing operation is 8 to 16 weeks long. About 30% of the work is inside the plant and 70% outside the plant. Go back to the graphic. The part here inside the plant, about 30%, and then about 70% down here, manhole 5 is outside the plant. We won't be doing anything with this upstream pipe. We'll be coordinating construction traffic for material and fuel deliveries. The project cost is approximately $5 million at the current design level. And we've been working all along with the landfill staff and the park staff throughout design, and we'll continue that through construction. To protect the public and the environment, we're doing our environmental CEQA work. We're going to minimize natural habitat disturbance by performing construction activities during the daytime only. Limit construction activities within developed area on gravel roads. The bypass piping runs along the service road, along the closed landfill. We'll have contractor personnel on site 24/7 to monitor the bypass pumps, and the fencing area that protects the public from going into areas they shouldn't be going into will be have clearance at the bottom to allow wildlife to pass through the areas. And then in terms of the public that comes up against this construction zone, we'll have information and detour signs on trails and fences for everyone's protection, as well as traffic control flaggers to control trucks coming in and out of the area. This shows the trail detour and signage. So the blue line is our pipe underground that we'll be relining. The green is the part that's upstream that we're not relining. The red shows the trails that are closed around Bixby Park. And then the yellow shows the detour route around the closed area. And the little orange circles are the manholes along the 72-inch pipe. So manhole 5, where the bypass pumps will be set up, is right here along this landfill service road. And then manhole 4, where the liner will start, is a little bit further down, and back in the wooded area is the treatment plant. And so people will be told here that they can go up and over the hill in Bixby Park, or they can go back around on the flat area if they'd rather have a flat trail. This graphic shows in black line is the fencing that's all around the work zone. And I have a closer in view here. Remember, as I said, the bypass pumping is at manhole 5. The liner goes in at 4 all the way to the front end of the plant. And then by the landfill maintenance yard, we have fencing that ties in all around to our treatment plant. And that's the only other slides I have. So if you have any questions, I'm glad to take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation, James. We'll look to go to any members of the public who have questions, who would like to speak on this topic. But first, we'll ask if any commissioners have any clarifying questions first. Please raise your hand if you have a question. I'm not seeing any hands. So are there any, oh, you do have, I see a hand. Go ahead. Whose hand is raised? Go ahead and speak.
That's me. No,
Sorry, it just shows up to me as commissioner. So it's binary for me.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. This should be a kind of a clarifying question, I suppose. I know you're putting in a lot of effort to minimize the amount of disruption to the hikers and so forth, but will it be, I imagine with all the equipment that you're going to have out there, like generators and boilers and heavy equipment, how do you go about, I guess, minimizing the noise, which I guess could affect wildlife, even though you're doing most of your work during the day? And the other, is there any, understand that there could be potentially some odors that during the time that you're doing that work? And if so, how will that impact, I guess, the community, and how long would that actually occur?
What was your second question? There'll be some what?
Whether or not there's any, I understand that there's, I guess when you start doing your curing, is any smells that are generated as a result of that type of work that you're doing?
On the noise issue, we're going to comply with this Palo Alto noise ordinance, but we're also going to require sound enclosures on the bypass pumps so that they're much more quiet than what could be achieved just by strict compliance with the noise ordinance of the city. So we'll be going above and beyond that and lower than what Mountain View is doing. In terms of the smell from the resin being cured, Mike Randall, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so when we're doing these over the hole wet outs, right, there are these larger cured in place cures. When the hot water goes into that impregnated sock that Jamie showed on the slide, there are, a chemical reaction to cure that liner, and there can be odors with inside that liner that's put inside the pipe. How that's dealt with is that water's left in place to cure and cool down. Being so close to the plant's headworks, we also need to be mindful that we got to cool that water down so that it doesn't have upsets to the treatment process when that water is released. So there's strict requirements in our project specifications that we're going to put in there to really limit the risk of any of those odors being present and released during that lining process by holding that water in place and letting it cool.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before we proceed, these questions are a little bit, perhaps a little bit beyond just simple clarifying questions, but I don't see any members of the public who are looking to speak. Is that correct, Javad?
Correct. I see no members of the public in person or online looking to speak.
Okay, so then we can just proceed with a normal round of questioning, which kind of feels like what we've started. Who else's hand is up? Go ahead and speak, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, James, for the presentation. I was going to ask about potential risk, and then you already asked that, so I would let maybe someone else ask. I was going to ask about the impacts, but it looks like we have that covered already. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe I could ask the vice chair to help me with if he sees hands raised to order of speaking.
We're just gonna, Chair, we are just gonna go down the line, beginning with Commissioner Oche, and then continue with Commissioner Kleinhaus, Commissioner Brown, along down how we're seated.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. One is just a clarification. When eventually all the metal will corrode, and then that blue liner just stays there and functions as an independent conveyance?
Well, the liner, Mike, you can tell us how thick it is, but what we're doing is protecting the concrete from further corrosion. So we're still depending on the reinforced concrete and the steel that's in the concrete to provide structural support. And, in 100 years, no, it's not going to last that long. So there would need to be some other rehabilitation. But Mike, can you speak to the longevity?
Yeah. I guess the analogy, right, that we use is we're kind of laminating the pipe. So similar to putting a sheet of paper in a laminator, right? We're using this CIPP liner to really protect that steel. So it's going to act as a new preventative corrosion measure to basically keep oxygen and hydrogen sulfide gas, which is what's corroding the steel currently, from coming into contact with those gases in the headspace to buy operational years of the pipeline so that it can continue to maintain its structural strength without having further corrosion.
Okay, so the corrosion is coming from inside. There is no corrosion due to the salt water in the groundwater there?
Yeah, so the condition assessment that was conducted, right, that sees the inside condition of the pipe. Now, it's really hard and expensive to do a condition assessment of the exterior, but looking at the corrosion and from the video assessment that's available inside the pipe, we're trying to provide a solution to rehabilitate that internal surface of the pipe. There isn't any indications from that previous condition assessment that there is a problem externally with the pipeline. So, and once this is lined, additional cathodic protection testing could be done to see if there's any exposure on the outside of the pipe with that steel, if the city so choose to do that.
And I have seen the pipe dug up where we had a leak and we tried to fix it, and the outside of the pipe looks really good.
Yeah, because it's not coming into contact with the sewer gases that are inside the sewer. So usually the inside of these pipes are much more corroded than anything on the exterior, just because there's nothing to eat the concrete on the outside.
Okay, I remember they had a sewer replacement project at Shoreline years ago, and it was due to corrosion that was because of the salt content of the groundwater, I think. So that's why I was asking if there's a problem here. Okay, when do you expect the project to take place?
We want to bid it later this summer. And then these contractors for large diameter pipe, they plan their work for the spring and summer in about February. So we want to have the contract in place later this year and all the agreements with our partner agencies set up. And then the contractors work during dry weather. So it'd be next spring, summertime.
Okay, so another project that is moving forward in that same area is the horizontal levee. And I think they're looking at using more or less the same area for parking. And I'm wondering if you're coordinated. One question is, are you coordinating with them? The second one is about closure of that area, given that this project will be first, and then we have another project probably right after that in the same area. And so closure of that area will probably take a lot longer than only this project. And maybe somebody else, it's Public Works that should be answering. I don't know if you guys are coordinating.
I don't believe the horizontal levee project is ready to go that quickly, but we will coordinate with them. That's an in-house project in our environmental services division. And we're not removing any parking for this project.
No, I know. They are planning some of their parking in the area that you're closing. So, and then they will close it too. So essentially we could be looking at a very long time when that entire area is closed.
Okay, we'll coordinate with them.
Okay. And the issue with a very long time that it's close to the public is also a very long time of disturbance to the wildlife there and so on. So that's somewhat of concern. Are you planning to have lighting there?
Mike, you want to talk about the lighting?
Yeah, so the intent right now is to have some project lighting to facilitate the bypass pumping. So there will probably be, just for worker safety, at the diversion points, which is mainly going to be in the park area there at manhole 5, where Jamie had shown that in the presentation. That's where the main bypass is. And then we have some smaller bypass pumps to pick up flows coming from the landfill area. There might be enough aerial lighting at that landfill area. It's, you know, really up to the contractor to designate whether that existing lighting will facilitate that need. But that's our path forward right now, is to just have lighting at those bypass conditions for the work that has to be overseen at night.
So I thought you said there wasn't going to be much work at night. So I'm trying to think of whether it's even necessary to have work at night if it requires lighting.
Yeah, so once we start bypassing sewer flows around the sewer pipe, those flows have to be bypassed for the duration. So we won't be doing any active like construction activity with putting in the liner, but we will have that bypass system running 24/7 because we need to keep sewer flows out of that pipe while we're rehabilitating and cleaning the line.
So
And the workers, go ahead.
I just want to say we'll have the lighting shield so that focus on specific area.
Yeah,
can you
the lighting.
show me where that lighting might be? Can you go back and show us?
You see the screen?
Yes.
So in manhole 5, they'll remove this lid and drop pipes down inside the sewer, and they'll have bypass pumps in sound enclosures right here. And then when the workers are checking on the pumps, they'll need lights to look at the dials and gauges on the pumps.
Okay, and I know this is a silly question, but can they have a flashlight?
I mean, yeah, we could have them do that. It's I don't know the details of the worker safety and, you know, be able to do that job properly, but we can work with the contractor on that.
Maybe if they need more lighting above, you can have a switch. You'll turn it on when you come on to work and test whatever it is you want, and then you turn it off, rather than have all night lighting, whether you need it or not.
Right.
So flashlights or a switch are usually a good solution for those kind of things. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Brown?
Thank you for the presentation. I thought your slide 11 with information on the natural habitat disturbance and protecting the public was very clear, so I appreciate that. In addition to the information and detour signs on the trails, is any information going to be available on the website or staff presentations at council, or is there any other sort of messaging that's going to be going on?
We certainly can add that. We hadn't thought it through. You're talking about the Public Works website?
Just if there was a place on the website where there are ongoing city projects, if somebody was driving by or wanted to look it up later rather than just actual physical signs. I just thought something to consider as you
put a website on the sign, the public sign.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Freeman, did you have more to add?
Yeah, I think, well, like you mentioned in your presentation that there was some biological work. Let's see, was it? There's some work being done on the environmental side. You mentioned that the biological survey is underway. When do you expect that to be completed? And does your work start before, or after that completion?
It's in progress. Mike, do you want to tell them when you think it might be done?
Yeah, so we've got our biologist headed out to the site actually tomorrow to do that preliminary CEQA investigation. And then based on what they find and their desktop research that we're doing, that'll guide us through the city's planning department on further steps that need to be conducted, both pre-construction and then during construction, to comply with, Endangered Species Act and other environmental requirements for the project.
And
This project is putting the pipeline on the service roads. In 10 years plus time, when we have to reline the upper reaches of the pipe, that's probably going to require much more environmental work, because the bypass piping will be running across the flood control basin and across Adobe and Matadero Creek. So that'll involve a much more involved, probably an on-site biologist and things like that. But this project is closer to the plant where we have service roads.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Cribbs?
Yes, thank you very, very much for the presentation. I was interested, I think most of my questions have been answered, but about the communication to the public about what's going on and how it's going to be handled, and if you're going to use anything special to communicate. And then how long did this pipe is now fixed, how long do you expect it to last?
Mike, do you want to?
Yeah, so I can definitely take that second one. These large diameter rehab liners, they get useful life expectancies are like 25 to 50 years, really dependent on the amount of hydrogen sulfide gas, and then how well of a cleaning job the contractor is able to get during that dry period, right? Which is why we're anticipating construction duration to try and get as much sediment out of that line so that the city can see a really long life to this installation and provide the benefit of going with the trenchless technology.
Good. Well, I wanted to say that I really liked your analogy of the laminating paper. That made a lot of sense to me. So how do you tell that the pipe is failing? How often do you test for that?
We televised it twice in its 50-year life, more in recent decades. And, there's assessment standards where experts look at the level of corrosion. We use sonar inspection that can tell us how out of round the pipe is. And, just seeing the pictures you could see the ribbing of the steel that had been lost. We could tell that it had corroded maybe an inch or two into the 8-inch pipe. So with that evidence, that's a sign that corrosion is quite advanced.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. I have two quick questions. One is, with existing technology, if the pipe were to fail in 25 years with what we know now, would that pipe then need to be completely replaced, or is it something that can be relined again?
Yeah, so the large intent, right, would be that the liner would last that 25 to 50 years. So that's, like Jamie mentioned, condition assessments of that liner need to be conducted. And then that's where additional trenchless lining options can be used, either going back with a CIPP liner. That can be tricky though, trying to get adhesion. So that's why we want to do this right the first time. And then there's also other trenchless technologies that can be utilized. Largely what we're trying to do is also keep some of the capacity of the pipeline by keeping it smooth, right? And trying to get as much of that internal diameter to stay the same. So that's kind of the process that went through of selecting this replacement technology. But there's other options in the future to kind of re-preserve that steel if it were to re-expose itself in the future.
Thank you. And my last comment is in terms of the signage and to make sure that there's signage at the beginning of these trails with perhaps a map and definitely showing the detours to make sure that people who are hiking the trail know beforehand, before they get up to a detour sign, that the trail has changed. But thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to Chair Greenfield.
Thank you again for the presentation, and thank you, James, for meeting me beforehand to review this. Just to clarify, so once the bypass is in place, there'll be someone on site 24/7 to monitor operation, right?
Right.
Okay, and so Commissioner Kleinhaus had concerns about the lighting associated with that, and I share the concerns and appreciate whatever you can do to minimize that. Having the lighting the area on demand or as needed certainly makes a lot of sense, and if you can get by with a flashlight, that would make sense. Although one question I have about the flashlight, if there's a flashlight that's kind of spraying light in different somewhat random directions, as happens when someone holds a flashlight and they move around, is that more obtrusive to wildlife in terms of an interruption versus a fixed light? And I don't know that you will have the answer, but that's a question to consider.
I don't know the answer for that.
Thanks. And following up on Commissioner Brown's question about website messaging, presumably the Baylands web pages will include trail closure information. These web pages would probably be more prominently visited than some of the public works project pages, but these pages could have links to the project and the reason for the closure. It seems kind of logical for that to include. But just ask that community services staff coordinate with public works on that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is Darren Anderson. We can do that.
Great. Thank you. And then originally I had concerns about this potentially overlapping with the tide gate closure. Darren, do we have a new understanding of what the new timeline will be for the tide gate project? And I guess it's all sounding like a lot of construction activity going on in the Baylands between the tide gate phase 1 replacement or the seismic improvements along with the horizontal levee, which we'll hear about in either next month or the following month at the commission as an agendized item, and then this project as well. So all of this is within a similar roofs, but we just need to make sure we have coordination on all this, and particularly on in the planning phases to make sure there's nothing that's overlapping that's going to be a problem.
I share that concern. I've been in touch with Valley Water asking for an update on as soon as they know, and I don't believe they have the timelines yet to share. So as soon as they've got it, I'll get that and connect with both these other projects in the Baylands.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Stone, thank you for joining us this evening. Do you have any questions or comments you'd like to add at this point?
No, I appreciate it, but I don't. Thank you. Just interested in following the discussion.
Thank you. James and Michael and Sue, are there any further comments that you have at this point?
No, thank you for having us.
Okay, so this item is a discussion. It's not an action, and
Right.
so Darren, do you have any other thoughts before we move on to the next item?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just that I think for follow-up on this item, it would be Jamie sharing information to me, and then I'll pass it on in the department report.
Okay.
Can I ask one other thing?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So on the other end of this pipe, what's the catchment? Where is this coming from? The sewer?
Can you repeat? I'm not
The
understanding.
catchment area, where is the stuff that's going
Oh. It's 62.5% flow share from Mountain View. Can't remember the percent for the other agencies, but then it's Los Altos. It's South Palo Alto area along the Charleston sewer, and then Los Altos Hills. So those 4 agencies all contribute to this.
Okay, and the alignment looks like it's going under the old Los Altos treatment plant.
It's
over
just
on
west
San
of that.
Antonio.
Yeah. This metering station, this pipe intercepted the flows that used to go to the Los Altos treatment plant and Mountain View's treatment plant. And so they retired their capital infrastructure in 1972 when this system came online. And that's when we became the regional water quality control plant. This pipeline made it possible. So that's why it's called the joint intercepting. It's like we're joining with other agencies.
Okay, so you're making sure that anything that you may have to do there in the future doesn't, is not becoming more difficult because of construction in that area. They have home key and the water district wants to build something there and so on. Right? So I'm assuming that
Yes.
you're keeping a right of way.
Correct. I'm creating an easement so that when we have to bypass that line with the same type of technology in the future, we can run our pipelines above ground through the home key area and the green waste yard. So it's getting a little more crowded over there, but yes, we are protecting the ability to repair and maintain this pipe.
Okay, so the last thing is you mentioned CEQA and the mitigations. I think that because there's so many projects coming to the Baylands, the cumulative impacts should be considered. And I'm not sure whether you need to do a mitigated negative declaration, but I think you do need to look at all these other projects that are happening at the same time and more or less the same place and see whether there's cumulative impacts to wildlife or biological resources or other resources. So not only project specific, but also with the other projects that are happening in that area, which include potentially the Baylands Comprehensive Conservation Plan that has some construction parts to it, and the horizontal levee and the water, the gate, and maybe other things that I'm not aware of. Could be the disruptions will be there for many years, all the time. So, thank you.
Oh,
And thank you. I have a follow-up question as well. Is there cost sharing with neighboring cities on this?
Yes, 62.5% Mountain View. I think it's like 4% Los Altos Hills, and split the difference, I think, between Los Altos and Palo Alto.
So it's commensurate with the usage.
Correct, and the capacity right. It measures up with the allocated capacity right to flow within the pipe.
Great. And how does this project compare with a similar project that was done in the Baylands in Mountain View recently?
It's very similar, but ours is a much larger diameter. When you go from 3 feet diameter to 6 feet, it's a much smaller pool of contractors. So these contractors are all out of town. Mike, do you want to comment on the complexity of 6 foot versus 3 foot?
Yeah, so that 3 foot, I don't know if it looks like their setup from the photos wasn't necessarily an over the whole wet out. So where this one largely changes is that they have to do that wet out process on site just because it's too heavy. to ship that larger lining material on a truck with it already filled with the resin. So they'll do that in a wet out truck there on site as opposed to having it shipped out. So there's a slightly larger lay down area footprint just for that extra wet out tent and rollers. That's wetted out in a bag in a tent behind the truck. But other than that, it's a very similar process from the outside. I mean, there's nuances within it that the contractors have to have skilled labor and experience to do, which alludes to Jamie saying, you know, there's a lot smaller group of specialty contractors that work in this arena. But that's the large difference, is just the wet out procedure and the staging area.
Yeah.
That's required.
Like if they do it wrong, there's bubbles in the liner, and so we don't want someone doing that.
Yeah, it's just higher risk.
If okay, I have one follow-up question. Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So if this comes from North Bay Shore, 62.5%, is there capacity for the growth that is planned for North Bay Shore? They're looking at 10,000 housing units and some million, if I don't remember how many million of square feet of office in addition to what there is already there?
Yes, this has capacity.
It's
This
at
is
capacity?
this pipeline capacity is more for the wet weather flow than it is for the dry weather flow.
What does that mean in terms of?
So the flows increase during storm events, and the infiltration goes up during the wet season. And so the contribution from businesses and residents is like a fraction of what we see during storms. And so the pipeline was designed to carry not just the domestic sewage, but also infiltration and inflow and rainfall infiltration. And so that's what it's designed for. And so it can carry the anticipated growth as well as the wet weather infiltration.
Have this pipe convey rainwater?
Well, we try to keep it out, but sewer joints leak. Yeah, that's that's true of every system in every agency. And as we reline sewers, they get tighter and tighter, but the sewer laterals on your home property may be leaking into the sewer, so it comes from multiple sources.
I hope the leak is only into the pipe and not out of the pipe. But what you're saying is essentially that there is enough capacity for the growth that is planned in North Bay Shore.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Just to follow up on the Mountain View the work, were there any environmental issues of note that occurred during that project? And are there any lessons learned and anything that we're doing differently as a result of that?
They spoke to us about that. They didn't have public meetings, that they coordinated closely with their parks department as we're doing. And they just put in protections for the public from, harm. And they did the work at the golf course. There was some areas on grassy areas of their golf course that were coordinated closely, but they didn't have any environmental issues. They worked with their in-house biologist on that.
Thank you. Other commissioners have follow-up? Vice Chair?
Shawnee, did you? Commissioner Kleinhaus, your microphone is off.
Yeah, they have borrowing owls on that, in those grassy areas. And so they have to take care of any, we don't have borrowing owls nesting anymore at all. And we occasionally have them wintering. But that's why they had to have the biologist on, like, closely monitoring.
Right.
Oops.
Chair, there are no more questions or comments.
Thank you. Darren, anything or anything else from the presenters? Thank you very much. Appreciate you providing this information to us. It seems like obviously something that needs to get done, and but it's got to get done right. And we appreciate your care and with us and look forward to getting updates on how things go along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, bye-bye.
We'll now move on to our next business item, which is the commission attendance policy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Tim Shimizu, who's with the City Attorney's Office, and Tim represents the Community Services Department and other departments with the city. Thanks for being here, Tim.
Good evening, members of the Parks and Recreation Commission. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Tonight, I'd have a brief reminder about the changes in the Brown Act with the end of the California state of emergency related to COVID. And that's ending tomorrow, so very timely. So part of this, most of this training is review if you went to the boards and commission training earlier this year. So it's nothing new if you went to that, but if you didn't, I am here to answer questions at the end. So next slide, next slide. So just some background. So the California state of emergency related to COVID-19 will end today, actually. And so under the COVID state of emergency, the Brown Act default rules for attendance at Brown Act meetings, including this one, allowed remote attendance, virtual attendance, in lieu of the pre-COVID rules that usually applied. But starting tomorrow, going forward, the default rule, again, is in-person attendance at these meetings. So can't emphasize that enough. Going forward, the default rule is in-person attendance. And use of remote virtual attendance will be much, much more constrained starting tomorrow. And so I will go over what that means. The next slide. Okay, so remote attendance starting tomorrow, there are two rationales that you can use to attend a Brown Act meeting remotely going forward. So one is what I call the standard remote attendance rule, which is a rule that existed before COVID and that still exists. And the second way is under AB 2449, which is new post-COVID, or at least post-state of emergency. And you have to either, basically it's if you're sick or have a family emergency. So, and I'll explain a little bit more in the following slides. So standard remote attendance. So this is if you want to attend remotely under this set of rules under the Brown Act, you have to turn wherever you are into a public meeting space, allow anyone who wants to come and sit with you, even if that's your house. You have to post the agenda on your door, and people, whoever wants to part, and the address of wherever you are has to be on your agenda, your packet agenda in advance. So all of this means you may consider it to be very impractical to do this, but that's the rule. And you have to remember this rule existed before COVID. So it was allowing people to participate basically from an alternative location where the public could still come and attend and participate. So if we show the next slide, here's an example of the March 2nd, 2020 City Council agenda. And you can see here that Vice Mayor Du Bois participated from the business office of the Courtyard Seacus Marriott in New Jersey. And there it is. So anyone who was there who wanted to participate with him could go there, sit with him, make public comment from his tablet or computer or whatever, but that's what it would take. So, whether that's your house, whether that's your hotel, whether you're in a foreign country, whether you are here, that's what it takes. So just consider that. And it also means Darren needs to know well in advance so he can put that on the agenda for your meeting. So it's not something you can do, you can't call him up the same day and say, oh, hey, I need to participate from home using this method. That's just not feasible. Okay, next slide. What is more feasible is AB 2449. And this is new, responding to the post-state of emergency world we are now living in. And so under AB 2449, you can participate remotely under certain circumstances with certain limits, and you don't have to post stuff on your door. You don't have to let people come in the house with you. You just participate virtually, akin to kind of how people are doing it now during the state of emergency. So there are two bases you can use to avail yourself of this. One is called just cause, and it means that you are sick with a contagious illness, you have a caregiving need of a family member, you have an unaccommodated disability-related need, or you are traveling on official city business. So not business related to your personal job, unless you maybe work for a city. But if you're traveling on official city business, you can also use this. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so under just cause, so again, this is basically if you're sick or you're caring for someone who's sick, what do you do if you want to do this? So you notify the commission at the earliest opportunity. So call Darren, let Darren know. You say, I need to participate remotely. You don't have to give him your diagnosis. You don't have to say, I have, crazy food poisoning or norovirus and I have XYZ problems. You don't have to give him all that. Just have to tell him I have a contagious illness and I need to participate remotely. And you just have to notify the commission at the very beginning of the meeting that you're doing this. And as long as Darren can confirm that all the other requirements are met, that's fine. You just go ahead and participate remotely. Okay, next slide. The second basis under AB 2449 is what's called emergency circumstances. And this is if you have an emergency related, a health emergency, or someone that you care for has a medical emergency and it comes up so suddenly that it prevents you from attending in person. And so what do you do in emergency circumstance? So the procedure is a little bit different. You actually have to request that the body allow you to participate remotely. And so at the top of the meeting, the first action of business will be voting to allow this person to participate remotely. And so again, you don't have to give your full medical diagnosis. You just have to give a brief, very brief one-sentence explanation about why you fit into this emergency circumstances box. And so assuming that the commission agrees and votes yes, that you can do this, then you can proceed and participate remotely. Again, without any of the other requirements such as posting an agenda on your door, or letting people in your house, things like that. Okay, next slide. So here's a chart, and this is online. We can also send it to you just as a list what the conditions are you need for each one, just cause and emergency circumstances, what you need to do, the process, and the result is that, of course, at both the end of the day, you can participate remotely. So next slide. So there are some additional requirements that are outside of the person making the request's control. So that's why contacting Darren is so important, that you contact him as early as possible, that when you know that you need to avail yourself of this. So one of the requirements is that at least a quorum of the rest of your commission members have to attend from a singular in-person location still, so here, right? So if too many people want to do this on the same day, your meeting may get canceled ultimately, because even if you can all qualify otherwise. And assuming you can go forward, you also have to disclose if someone over 18 is in the room with you and their general relationship with you. So at the top of the meeting, you say, I'm here and in the room with me is my spouse or my adult child. And that's really all I have to say. And you have to participate through audio and visual communication. So generally over the phone usually isn't good enough. So using Zoom or Teams. And staff can help facilitate that with you. Okay, next slide. And then there are additional requirements about how the city has to make sure that this meeting is available to the public. And the city basically already does that. So not typically something you have to worry about. The most important thing being that, of course, if broadcasting online is interrupted, the meeting has to be paused until that access is restored. Okay, so next slide. And then one more requirement is that you can for this commission at least, because based on the amount of meetings you have a year, you can only use AB 2449 twice in a calendar year. So it's important to remember that. Darren has to keep track of that, and you should keep track of that just so you remember. But again, it's something that you will need to consider when you're thinking about whether you want to use this or not. So twice in a calendar year. And so provided on this slide is a sample script of what you would say if you were going to use the emergency basis, circumstances basis under AB 2049. It's very straightforward. The overall point is that it's very brief. And again, you don't have to give your doctor's full diagnosis, and that you announce who's in the room with you. Okay, next slide. So again, you need to talk to Darren as soon as you know, and so that Darren can also make sure all the other requirements are satisfied and that not too many people are using this to the point that you can still have a quorum in person, and that you haven't exceeded your 2 virtual appearances for the year. And so again, the 2 is limited to AB 2449 app virtual appearances. The 2 doesn't apply to the I'm going to post the agenda on my house, that tranche or that law, part of the law. So only AB 2449 appearances are limited to 2 a year. Okay. Any questions? Very quick overview.
Tim, thank you for the presentation and the overview, and a lot of great information in here. Before we go to Commissioner questions and comments, first I'd like to find out if there's any members of the public who would like to speak on this item, either in chambers or online.
Chair, I'm seeing no hands raised in person or online for public comment.
Thank you. And before we go to the commission, I'd like to get clarification, please. This item is in action. So that means we have something to decide here this evening in terms of what our remote attendance policy will be. Could we get an explanation, please, of what the options are for us in this action? Because that's not really clear in this presentation. Also, it'd be helpful to get an understanding of what the city council remote attendance policy is. And also I'm interested in understanding if the city council has come up with what their remote attendance policy will be. Why isn't the same policy just automatically applying to all of the BCCs, the boards, commissions, and committees, rather as opposed to going to each commission to allow them to decide what their remote attendance policy will be?
So the action decision tonight is whether the PRC wants to impose any numerical limits on the what I'm going to call make your house the public meeting space form of remote participation. So again, under that form, there are no statutory limits on how many times you can do that in a calendar year. The city council has decided they are going to put for their own members a limit on how many times they can do that under certain circumstances. I think, well, I know Councilmember Stone is here, but I'm not going to put him on the spot. But I think that the council, in an effort to promote in-person attendance and their preference for that, did want to put some limits on that. However, they have left it up to each board and commission to decide for themselves whether they want to do that, whether they feel like that's going to be productive or not. And I can tell you that every board and commission I've been to and I've heard of has decided not to put any additional limits on remote attendance beyond what the law already says. So that's one option. And I personally have no recommendation either way for what PRC should do.
Okay, so then if I understand correctly, what you've described is the limitations placed on us by the state, and then as a body, we are free to decide on further limitations.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And Before going out to the commission, I'll also comment that, as you've noticed, I am remote this evening. So a clarifying question is, contagious illness is just cause, is exposure to contagious illness a just cause? And that is why I am not present this evening, potential exposure to contagious illness.
I would think so. I think your commission members would appreciate that actually, right? I don't think they would second guess that.
But is that permissible under AB 2449 is my question. I don't question that it's appreciated it would be appreciated by fellow BCC members. I certainly would appreciate the same.
Well, let's just say this, because this is new, this is very new law, and this is new for the entire state, everyone working with it. So I can't tell you with 100% certainty what the answer is or what the California legislature, when they were drafting this, what their intention was. But, Darren can work with you and work with me and to identify whether any given specific situation and fact pattern fits into this. Definitely with an eye toward faithful and compliance with the spirit and letter of the law, but also, acknowledging that this is intended to facilitate the business continuing even when people are sick or might be sick. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That this is certainly consistent with the spirit of the law and the spirit of the intent. With that, I'll open it up to commissioners for comments and questions. Vice Chair, if you could orchestrate that, please.
Yes, let's start with Commissioner Cribbs.
I don't have any questions or any comments.
Commissioner Freeman.
Thanks for the presentation. I have no questions.
Commissioner Brown.
Just a clarifying question. So for AB 2449, my understanding is that you need to participate with video and audio, be unmuted and have your camera on at all times. That was my understanding of the law.
I don't know if you have to be unmuted,
Okay.
because just for practical sake, but you do have to have the capacity to, participate by video and audio in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I think I saw a presentation in another city where they mentioned that the law was trying to be strict and that they were saying that you need to have your camera on and your mic unmuted.
I'll get back to you if it's
Okay.
that strict, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
And then for the standard remote attendance, that could be by phone, as council members have participated by phone only. Have any other commissions imposed additional restrictions saying you have to participate by video and, okay.
No.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Kleinhaus.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Brown, could you repeat the last comment you made?
Last comment was that if any other commissions had required that the standard remote attendance with the agenda posting on your door in public meeting, if they required video participation, because that allows just audio phone participation.
Sure. And when that law was made, video participation probably wasn't an option.
Yeah, and so just one interesting little tidbit about that is that it also, the standard remote participation assumes you're in a fixed place because you have to post your address, right? So it means you can't participate, say, from the car or somewhere where you're moving, or somewhere where the public can't go to, like an airport terminal, or a lounge in the airport. So again, just things to kind of consider when you're thinking about using these different options.
Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Thank you. No questions.
Commissioner Oche.
Thank you for the presentation. I don't have any comments or questions at this time.
Okay. My only question is, are we going to continue to allow speakers to call in remotely, or will people need to both present in attendance? And if we have any public comment, will they need to be in attendance as well?
So that's a good question. So the Brown Act under AB 2049, if you are using that, you do have to allow the public to participate remotely also. So like giving public comment, things like that, you know, and so those are things the city already does. And I don't think there's any plan to change that. Yeah, so it shouldn't be an issue for our commissions.
And Tim, just to build on this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also true that, for example, how we had staff participate remotely, that will also be allowed to continue.
Yeah, so the Brown Act doesn't say anything, at least nothing new about how staff participates as like a presenter. So you may continue to see those kind of presentations being made remotely. And of course, that's something that, you know, if the commission has a preference for specific items, it can always voice that through Darren, you know, in your agenda setting meetings.
Thank you. And I would be in favor of imposing no additional restrictions to this. Chair, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lemare. I have a few more questions. What's an example of a physical emergency? Under emergency circumstances, physical or family medical emergency?
So, you know, again, because this is new, I can't give you some kind of authoritative interpretation, but, you know, using our common sense hats of what that is probably means is, you know, I fell today and I broke my leg and I'm fine now, but I'm in a wheelchair and it's really painful to move outside of my house. So, and that just happened this morning. I mean, that's kind of the easiest example I can think of that I would think falls within this. But, you know, I think as we deal with specific examples, we'll get a better idea of maybe what's in or out.
So this might actually mean physical medical emergency or family medical emergency as opposed to physical, or so that's referring to something medical.
Well, I think
I just I didn't understand what it meant. That's what I was asking.
I think the takeaway from the way it's written is that it doesn't just have to be something that happened to you. It can be something that happened to someone in your family that now you have to help take care of.
Okay. And as far as a more of a local emergency, like a disaster type of emergency, obviously that's going to maybe that doesn't apply, but in the case of a disaster and there's access issues, and assuming that over half of the commission were able to show up for an on-site quorum, would that apply?
That's a great question, you know, because so AB 2449 really doesn't. So let me take a step back. There's another part of the Brown Act that has been amended during the pandemic that talks about what happens when you can kickstart basically the pandemic style virtual attendance model like you've been doing up till now. And so there are provisions that are still now in the Brown Act about, you know, if there is a state of emergency combined with one other factor, so whether it's public health issues, pandemics, or some other categories, it says you can go back into this kind of virtual meeting. But AB 2449, as you can see, is not itself designed to deal with, say, like you know, there's an earthquake and we have our PRC meeting tomorrow. What do we do? Can we use this? So this really isn't designed for that.
Great. I do appreciate the example emergency script slide. That was excellent. And so you're not clear what the you don't know exactly what the city council limitation is that they placed.
I just know that they do have one for their, in terms of availing themselves, especially of the standard remote attendance. But yeah, I'm not aware of any other commission that has adopted that for themselves.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Stone, any comments or any insight on that?
Yeah, my recollection, I think we capped it at 3 meetings, and then I'm trying to remember if we included that as full council meetings and council ad hoc committee meetings. Can't recall the details, but it's a fairly small number. I think the council is probably as frustrated as commissioners as well about the state law change and kind of scratching our heads about why we're not embracing the new technology, but it is what it is. And I can't speak for the rest of the council on the reasoning why we didn't just make this uniform for all commissioners, but seemed to me best to leave it to the discretion of each individual commission and you all knowing what's best for your own purposes.
Okay, and that, so the 3 total meetings, that applies to the standard exception, not to the new AB 2449 exceptions. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, I believe so.
So as far as the new exceptions, that would fall under the 20% limitation.
That's my memory.
Right. Okay. And it's just to follow up, I think I've heard this. If there's as far as remote meetings for the public, remote access for the public, what AB 2449 is covering is if any commission member or BCC member is remote, then the remote option has to be available to the public. But our local or the Palo Alto at this point in time is going to be continuing with the remote option for the public and for staff and presumably for city council liaisons as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have any further questions or comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to ask, this only applies to meetings of the commission, not to ad hocs or ad hoc meetings.
It's generally, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And, if as we all work with this new law, we'll work, you can work with Darren, who, has like the most direct line to me out of everyone in the city. So, we'll figure it out. Yeah.
If I understand correctly, it applies to any publicly noticed meetings, and the only publicly noticed meetings that this commission has is our regular monthly meeting or a special meeting. But all of our ad hocs do not fall under that, or then they don't fall under Brown Act constraints. I've heard some commissioners indicate that they would be their leaning is towards doing what the other commissions have done and not place any further constraints on. Do any commissioners have a different opinion that they would like to discuss? And if no one has,
there are no additional comments, Chair.
then would anybody like to entertain a motion?
Sure, I'll move that we approve the motion to not impose any additional restrictions on the remote attendance policy.
I second that.
Thank you. And would you like to speak to your motion?
No.
And the second?
No.
Is there any further discussion which anyone would like regarding the motion?
There's no further discussion, Chair.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribs,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche.
Yes, please.
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Thank you. And thank you, Tim, for joining us this evening. Thank you for your work and presentation, and look forward to hearing from you next time.
Very welcome.
We'll now move on to our next business item, which is the Park Improvement Ordinance, or PIO, for 2850 West Bayshore Development Project.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Let me start by introducing Garrett Sauls. Garrett's a planner with the Planning and Community Environment Department. Thanks for being here tonight, Garrett.
Good evening, Commissioners.
And Garrett, if you want to kick off the discussion, I'll toggle through the screens. Just tell me when to change screens.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I appreciate the time tonight, Commissioners, to talk about kind of a small aspect of the project at 2850 West Bayshore Road that the City Council reviewed and approved last year for a new 40-unit townhome project. Next slide. So last year on June 20th on June 20th, the City Council approved an architectural review application and tentative vesting tentative map subdivision application to allow for a new 48-unit for sale townhomes at the 2850 West Bayshore property you see circled in red on the image to the right. In particular, the question and the items that we're talking about tonight relate to the existing sewer easement that runs between this property, 2850 West Bayshore Road, 2800 West Bayshore Road, and Greer Park. The cursor that you see moving across the screen roughly shows the area where the current easement is that was granted to the property about 60 or 70 years ago when those were first established. And the applicant at 2850 West Bayshore Road is looking to replace the existing sewer line that's there, as well as realign the easement to be further outside of the Field 3 zone of play. Next slide.
And Garrett, just really quickly, I wanted to highlight for the commissioners Field 3. We're going to be referencing this later in the presentation, so it's dead center here in your screen.
This image here shows the existing sewer line layout. As you can tell, it services 2850 West Bayshore Road, which is highlighted in pink, and the adjacent property, 2800 West Bayshore Road. As I mentioned before, it cuts through Greer Park near where Field 3 is. Right now, actually, kind of goes almost through the middle of Field 3. And the tail pink that you can see kind of at the bottom shows or represents the existing easement alignment. Next slide. Now, in initial discussions with the applicant, their first thought was to retain the existing easement line and do maintenance and work within that area in order to replace this sewer line. And as you can see on the screen, primary issues that came up were that it was going to be impacting the area of the soccer field and baseball fields for Field 3 in terms of preventing individuals or community programs from being able to utilize the field during the construction activities. Additionally, you can see around where the bend occurs that there would also be required to be a manhole placed within the park, if that were to be the case. The current building code requires that any sort of bend, or in the event that there's a bend in a sewer line, that there needs to be a new manhole placed on the site, which when staff had those conversations with the applicant raised a lot of serious issues in terms of the usability or future usability of the park, as well as the impacts to the city's programs. Next slide. As a part of that discussion, what we ended up figuring out with the applicant is that there could be a new alignment for this sewer easement, such that it would be placed outside of the bounds of Field 3 in the area of play. You can see on the bottom of this snipped image the outline, the dashed lines of the existing easement, and the blue line representing the area for the new sewer easement. It would be a straight line running from properties at 2800 and 2850 West Bayshore Road, running down to an existing sewer easement line, so there wouldn't be any additional need for a manhole placed within the park other than what exists out there today. Next slide. In addition to this new alignment, there is the area of work for where this is going to occur will also be much more limited, such that it doesn't impact the areas of play for the soccer field at field 3. You can see this grayed outline where the cursor is moving along right now represents the area of work just temporarily for where this new sewer line is going to be placed. As a result of this project, there won't be any proposed tree removals on the parkland. And you can see in kind of a light peach pink color near where it says sheet 3, that's also where the access from 2850 West Bayshore Road is going to be provided. It's kind of a peach color just a little bit north and to the right of where the cursor is right now. That will be the access way from 2850 West Bayshore Road onto this property for the work to occur. Next slide. So in terms of the construction methods and the time frame for what this kind of this work will be, it's anticipated that it could be a 2 to 3 week process for start and completion for construction. During this time frame, parts of the dog park will be unavailable for about 2 to 3 days. And then following the completion of the work, there'll be about 6 to 8 weeks for soil decompaction, seeding, and reestablishing the turf on the field to bring it back to kind of the existing conditions that are out there. The proposed construction method is to install the sewer line in sections. The plan is to dig and trench and backfill each day sections of the new sewer line that they're going to be placing so that it would not require extensive fencing around the area with the exception of when work is occurring. So there would be flaggers, cones, and caution tape used during that construction, but there won't need to be chain link fencing or others left on site once that trench has been backfilled at the end of the day. And then equipment will be stored on 2850 West Bayshore Road, so there won't be any need to store equipment on the parkland. Next slide.
Thank you, Garrett. And there are soccer and Little League activities permitted for use on Field 3 currently, and that extends through May 22nd, 2023. The soccer activities for weekend use of the field and construction activity, thanks to this new alignment, will not interfere with the soccer group use of Field 3. The Little League baseball activities on weekdays in the afternoons. And again, because of this new alignment, it's further away and will not impact their use. Adam Howard met with both groups, both the Little League and Palo Alto Soccer, to inform of the project, approximate timeframes, and collect their feedback. And they were grateful for the outreach and felt comfortable that we've taken measures to avoid impacts, and they're comfortable with moving forward. This slide shows the access route for the equipment materials. So they would temporarily take down this fence and the park course sign to create approximately a 10 to 15 foot gap so they could access through there. Here's a close-up view of the shrubs that they would come through. It appears to be a mix of privet. I saw some invasive weeds like mallow and some Italian buckthorn. And Summer Hill will replace these shrubs that they end up pruning and or removing with native species from a list that the city provides them. And park staff will be in consultation with grassroots ecology for something that's really appropriate for the site and hopefully can survive and thrive without regular irrigation, because that's not an irrigated area. Those are all volunteer species that have grown in that particular spot. And regarding the applicant's responsibility at the end of the project, what do they come back and do and make sure that there are no issues? The dog park is one. We mentioned they'll have to come through that. Should they affect or damage the surfacing of the dog park, they'll be required to put that back in like or better condition to where they found it. Same with the fencing. This will be the same situation with the park pathways. So staff will be taking before and after photos, as will Summer Hill, I'm sure, and ensuring that wherever they cross and touch the paths that they aren't damaged or affected in any way. The turf areas, thankfully, this alignment puts it at the edge or outside the edge of the field of the play. So they will most certainly be affecting that outside edge, and there's a buffer of turf that'll be impacted. That will go through our typical prescribed renovation process. So it'll be decompacted, seeded, fertilized, fenced off, watered and irrigated so that it grows back to a healthy stand, but it won't affect the use of the field 3. So that will be on the buffer area. And then replanting those shrubs I mentioned at their entry point. And Garrett?
So at the moment, the envisioned timeline for approval of this park improvement ordinance is to, with the recommendation ideally from commission tonight, have the park improvement ordinance to city council on the consent calendar for March 6th. Ideally to have a second reading on the 20th, and then 30 days after that, have that park improvement ordinance become effective so that construction can begin on the site as well as off the site for the applicant so they can begin constructing the housing project. Next slide. Staff's, in addition to staff's recommendation, we wanted to highlight some of the benefits of this new easement alignment, which is, as we noted before, it adjusts the easement outside of the sports field where before it would have needed to be directly in the middle of it. It eliminates the need for a manhole in that instance as well. And it's also good to note that there isn't any proposed tree removals with a new easement alignment as well. And staff recommends approval of the proposed park improvement ordinance to City Council.
And Chair, that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Garrett, and thank you, Darren. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, Darren, we do, or yes, Chair Greenfield, we do have one member of the public ready for speaking in person.
Okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have any clarifying question before we go to the public? Just a straightforward question. Let's go ahead and go to John Hickey. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm John Hickey. Good evening, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm VP of Development for Summerhill Homes. We also have Kevin Ibrahimi, who's our Senior VP of Development here this evening as well. Garrett and Jared did a great job with their presentation. So the nice thing for you is that I won't have to say as much. I'll try and keep it really brief. The key here is that we were really trying to help the city achieve their goal. That's the reason we wanted to move forward with this option. We have the existing easement, but we think that this is a better approach for the city. And so obviously going at the edge of the field rather than across the field is better, not just in short-term impacts, but in long-term impacts as well. I guess the other thing I wanted to mention, it sounded like we have the support. It was great to hear support of Little League and of the soccer folks as well. I appreciate staff reaching out to them beforehand to get their input. And I don't want to speak for staff, but our understanding is that staff, planning staff, public works staff, park staff all support this approach as well. So again, we ask for your recommendation this evening. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. And thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Go ahead and go around to the commissioners for questions and comments.
Yes, let's start in the middle with Commissioner Brown if she is ready and has some comments or questions, and we'll move to the left.
Yeah. So it seems that the applicant will restore all the elements that may be disrupted, and the move of the sewer line to a better location seems great. I have a question about public benefits. This uses the park and makes it inaccessible for some of the users for some time. And I was just wondering if there is any contribution in addition to what has to be done to restore the existing conditions. And specifically, I'm thinking about the skate park over there that we're trying to finance. And I know I'm not trying to do horse deal, like trying to, but I think there's got to be some public benefits to the public if public park and time and efforts are used. And I think we have an adjacent project that we're trying to finance. And I would like would love to see a contribution towards that. That's my comment, and I don't know if that it's a question. It's something to think about for all of us and for council, I suppose.
Commissioner Oche?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just want to say a big thank you for the fact that you considered the Palo Alto Soccer and Little Leagues team. My question is, I wanted to just clarify what the entire project timeline for construction is. I'm not sure if I got that clearly.
Yeah, so what we were identifying and what Summerhill has identified to us is that in terms of start to finish, their plan is that it will take about 2 weeks. Given that we've been having a lot of rain lately, we want to think that it might be it could be possible it might be a little bit longer, maybe 2 to 3 weeks for them to finish construction. But again, based on what their schedule is, they're also going to, the same day that they trench out and start filling in or putting in that the sewer line, they're also going to be backfilling it as well. So that will kind of help to not have any sort of pits or fences per se, right, within the park visible at that point as well.
Thanks, Garrett. I was going to also ask, so what's the other option? Because if it's an action, would it be an inaction, or what are the options if we have a proposed recommendation? Just out of curiosity.
Forgive me, I missed. Could you repeat that one?
So for the proposal that we have, what are the options? If we don't go with this, what's the other option? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, so you've got the park improvement ordinance that you're being asked, and you could recommend that council adopt the ordinance, or you could recommend they don't. You could ask the applicant to come back or staff to come back another time. Staff have talked about a little bit. We had worked with Commissioner Freeman to talk about what would happen if the commission voted, we don't support this. And Garrett Sauls and I also discussed this a little bit. And our attorney representative, Tim Shimizu, had mentioned at that point, it becomes staff discretion whether to bring this on forward to the council with the caveat that the commission did not recommend it, or do we ask them to come back to the commission again to work on it? And it kind of depends on what the criteria for the concerns are. Are they something we could address before it goes to council and remedy? Or is it something really more substantive that we aren't able to address and that might call for a different course of action?
I see. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Cribbs. Commissioner Freeman.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And yes, I have been working with Darren on this, and the new easement, I think it looks like it might be a better workable solution. I do have one question. There's no, in the new easement, there's no manhole anywhere in the field. Is that correct?
Correct. There's an existing manhole that it will be connecting to on the property side closest to the residences. So that would be the western side of Greer Park. So it would be connecting to that. And then there's an existing sewer line manhole on the properties. So it would be just kind of connecting point A to point B.
Okay. The other question, I know we did contact the soccer league and also the baseball folks who are involved in this. The dog park people with their dogs will also be affected by this. So, which means that we need to at least come up with signage that is going to be put up early enough so that they know sort of what the impact is going to be, but they'll probably have to walk their dog somewhere else. And the duration of that. And I know that in your plan here is to restore everything back to the way it was. And so I don't know how that's going to, you can't replace and grass not going to grow quickly and that type of thing. So what are the plans to kind of make it usable for dog walkers so that they can immediately take advantage of going back and enjoying that moment there?
Yeah, fortunately in this situation, this dog park is decomposed granite surfacing. And so there isn't a lengthy regrowth that we'd have if it was grass. I think we could shape and compact it and get it back into the same condition really quickly.
Okay. And the signage would probably go up about what, couple of weeks before, a week before, so that they know ahead of time that they have to look at other options?
Yeah, typically 2 weeks is what we target. I have a meeting coming up with a member and the head, actually, president of the Palo Alto Dog Owners Association group for Palo Alto. And so I think I'll meet with her and explain this. And if she wants to help get the word out, that'd be great. And then we can get the signage earlier too, just to get, 3 weeks couldn't hurt. So I'll work with Summerhill and Garrett and make sure we have the times right. Probably even if I don't know the exact date or it's subject to change, we anticipate this window, just be aware, and I'll just keep updating it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Vice Chair. Yeah, about the dog park, is it a time that we could do something additional about the dog park as it's getting put back together or not?
I think we're only looking at about 2 to 3 days of the
Okay.
dog park being inaccessible. So probably not too much more. A really robust cleaning with our in-house staff, perhaps.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah.
And then the timing is 6 to 8 weeks for the whole project, correct?
Well, the construction project, and Garrett, correct me if I'm wrong, is more like 2 weeks. The
Correct.
6 to 8 week, 3 weeks, yeah, the 6 to 8 week piece is the regrowth of grass. So in that disturbed section on the buffer of the field 3 is where we would have to leave some fences up, orange fencing, much like our regular park
Yeah.
renovations.
And could I ask one more time to put the map up again so
Oh, sure.
we could see it?
Absolutely. And just tell me which screen is most helpful.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Garrett, could you speak to why we need to do this project and put a new sewer line in?
Yeah, so what Summerhill communicated to us is that there were some underlying issues with the existing sewer line that they were experiencing or had noticed that there were some just sort of maintenance issues with it. The proposed line that they're proposing is the same diameter, so it's I think it's an 8-inch diameter pipe, if I remember correctly, that exists there. They're proposing a similar one to service the parcel. So it may just more be a matter of initially they wanted to go in and use the existing parcel, or sorry, the existing easement, but the problem that came up with was that that was going to impact the field 3 play zone as well as require a manhole kind of in the middle of it, which raised a lot of red flags for us.
And has the city confirmed that there's problems with this line and it needs replacement?
I believe perhaps Mr. Hickey might be able to speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. You're correct that there are some plans that indicate it's an 8-inch line that's existing right now, although there's also some indication that it's a 6-inch line that's existing there right now, which would not be adequate to serve the new project. So the existing line, even if there weren't any problems with it, would have to be replaced.
You said that it is a 6-inch line or it's an 8-inch line? Which one?
What I said was that there are some city maps that indicate it's an 8-inch line, but our potholing indicated that it's actually a 6-inch line.
And is that something the city has confirmed as well, or is that something we normally leave for a developer to let us know the diameter of the line?
And John Hickey may know more about this, but our utility staff have been working closely on this project. And Mr. Hickey, do you know if that's been substantiated by utilities?
I don't know whether Public Works has gone out and checked the line, but the line was actually built according to the staff report from 1976. The existing line was installed back in the early 60s. So it is well past its lifespan. And I think one of your earlier presenters was talking about infiltration. This is exactly the kind of line that has existing infiltration problems. And especially given that it's under a field that's actually designed to be part of your storm drain system. Again, if staff is willing to confirm that the existing line is an 8-inch line, and does not require any repair and is not going to require any repair for the next 60 to 70 years, we'd be happy to stay with that and not replace it. But I think that that's probably not something that staff is willing to do. And I want to, just because the question came up earlier, I just want to touch on a couple of things too. I think 2 weeks is probably a fairly accurate prediction of the total amount of time to install the line, but some of that will include the time that we're installing the line on the school site, because the easement actually runs first through 2800 and then across the park. So we're anticipating that the time to trench across the park is more like about 5 days. We might need an additional day for the dog park, just because of the logistics of working with the fence there and the existing trees. But we're actually looking probably at more like a 5 to 6 day working day period. And as was explained earlier, we're going to be trenching a section by section and backfilling each day. The other thing I wanted to mention about the dog park is that, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I am very familiar with it because I walk my dog there every day. But that existing dog park is it's more like a dog run. It's not really a dog park. It's only probably 20 feet wide. And the section where we'd be working is towards I guess it's the southeast end. So we were actually anticipating, and we can work with staff on this as you prefer, but we were actually anticipating that we would be installing a temporary fence that would be dog safe, so that most of the dog park would still be usable during the period where we were working in the dog park. Again, if that doesn't make sense because it's only going to be for a day or two, and staff would prefer for liability reasons just to close the dog park, we can do that too. But we are willing to work with staff on that. And one of the things I did want to mention just in terms of timing is that I appreciated the point about potentially coming back, but candidly, we don't have the luxury of that time because of the carrying costs. So if we're not able to move forward to council after tonight, we're probably just going to move forward with the existing easement.
And Garrett, if you could speak to the impact of, I see there's a 50-foot wide zone that could be needed for the truck, excavator, and loader that's in there. If you can speak to the impact on the work and the movement of the heavy equipment onto the parkland there.
Right. So I believe one of the, maybe go up one slide. Right. So it's kind of two different options. This option shown here is just a trench way of kind of pulling out the existing line and then putting in the new one. This gray area just shows kind of the area of work where they'd want to kind of cordon off or block off so that people aren't getting closer to where work is occurring. The other one that was shown is kind of a feed pipe, so to speak, where there's not necessarily a trench being put in, but there's points that still need to be, equipment that still needs to be placed on site at the bend point, which basically will help to kind of direct and angle the pipe, which you can kind of feed in on the left side of the image down underground. That doesn't necessarily require trenching, and you can kind of take it in and feed it in to get it down to that bend point. But then there needs to be equipment that will kind of forcibly angle it in the direction of the existing easement. And that equipment would need to be stored on site, on site near where the manhole is shown on this image at the bend, to kind of, again, direct it at that angle. With the design that we've shown, with the new alignment, that equipment isn't necessary and would be outside of the area of play for field 3.
Great, thank you for the clarification. And I'm assuming if we go with the straight pipe and the new easement, that the old pipe remains and there's no work done to that. Is that correct?
Correct. It would be abandoned in place.
And are there any problems with abandoning a pipe in place for the future?
Not in general, and Mr. Shimizu might be able to talk a little bit more about this, but in general, in terms of vacating the easement and vacating the existing infrastructure in the ground, it's seemingly a fairly common practice across many jurisdictions in the event that it's needed. If there were a more serious issue, environmental issue or otherwise, I think that would be something that we would certainly need to remove, but it doesn't seem like that's the case in this scenario.
Thank you. Are there commissioners that have any other questions before we have the chair speak? Chair Greenfield?
Thank you. Just following up on the Vice Chair's last question regarding the existing pipe being abandoned in place, would the existing pipe be sealed on each end?
I don't have that answer offhand. My understanding would be probably at the point where it connects, as you see on this image here, on the right-hand side of the image where it's connecting to that existing sewer line that runs perpendicular to the blue line. I imagine at that point, they would probably cap it off in some area.
Thank you. Can you clarify what the city obligations are regarding the current easement?
Yeah, so the current easement is more so kind of afforded to the adjacent property owners to be able to obviously service their parcel for sewage purposes. In terms of the agreement that was established, it does give or afford the property owners development rights to kind of perform maintenance and do work on that line. I think it was like I said, about 60 or 70-year-old document. So it's a fairly old one and maybe somewhat rudimentary compared to maybe today's standards for creating easements and vesting those rights for other groups. I don't know if Mr. Shimizu has anything else to add.
The only thing I have to add is that where the current easement is located, that area is actually not dedicated parkland because of that easement being there.
Thank you. So does that mean that we would be undedicating parkland for the new easement?
No, that would require a vote of the people. So staff and the city council have no ability to do that on their own.
I understand that.
Yeah. So the easement, the new proposed easement would run subject to our regular rules about park improvement ordinances. And that's why we're here, today.
I'm not sure I understand that answer. So currently there's an easement where the existing sewer pipeline runs, and that is not dedicated parkland. If we put the pipeline in the new location as requested, and I appreciate all the efforts that have been done with staff and the developer and community outreach to really come up with a workable problem. Having a manhole in the middle of a soccer field doesn't fly on lots of levels. So moving forward with this, would the current easement remain, and that would remain undedicated parkland, or would we dedicate that as parkland? Help me.
So once this is all done, the plan is for the existing easement to be abandoned and vacated. So basically no more easement, right, in that place, in the existing easement. And so then the city would have a policy question of whether to rededicate that strip, just like any other piece of undedicated land.
Okay, so it would be the city's choice whether or not to rededicate that or to dedicate that section as parkland. But the location where the new pipe would go would be on parkland, and that's why the PIO is being requested, because the request is to put the pipe on parkland.
Yes, and the PIO is also covering the fact that there's going to be construction happening in that.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so
yeah. Great. Thanks. That helps a lot. So a quick question about the location of the new pipeline. Isn't there like a berm, kind of a raised, like a little hill slope on the edge of the field there, and we can't see elevations with this 2D diagram?
Yeah, so there is a berm kind of raised within that space. So as we mentioned before, Summerhill would be responsible for, replacing that to its existing condition.
Okay. Thank you. And as far as the existing, the proposed location, is this clear of all the tree drip lines?
Yes, that is, I think there is another slide. I think if you go down one more slide, there you go. Sorry. There you go. The gray outline also shows the dashed lines around the trees that you see highlighted or kind of just three-dimensionally shown here. That represents the tree protection fencing that would be around those spaces. And then the gray outline just kind of shows the area of work that will be necessary to kind of accommodate that work for the new line.
Great. And has this plan been passed by the Urban Forestry Department or section?
Yes.
Okay. And they had no problems with this.
No, they didn't have any issues with it.
Okay. And getting to the portion of where the weeds or privets and the thicket would be cut down. So shouldn't the replacement plan be part of the PIO?
Yeah, it certainly can be, and we can get some. I think there was some. I believe we did have some drawings just relative to kind of any sort of replacement strategy about that. But that would be something that if there's a tree, for example, within that space, like the privet, I believe was one of the items that Mr. Anderson identified. Any sort of removal that would be necessary in order for this to occur would be required to be replaced based on the city's existing tree technical manual requirements.
I'm not opposed to removing privets, and if you can find some more to remove, I probably wouldn't argue with that. But it seems like it would be good before this gets to city council for the approval of the PIO to have a more complete replacement plan, including the species that would be involved, and get consultation with the urban forestry section as appropriate.
Yes, they did have, as a part of the formal application, there was a tree replacement strategy, especially along this area between the two properties of 2850 West Bay Shore and 2800 West Bay Shore. As a part of the scope of work that they included in that approval that City Council already reviewed and approved, they did have a replacement strategy there.
Okay, so this has already been addressed by City Council.
Correct.
Great.
And Chair, just to be clear, the PIO does include the aspects of the shrubs being replaced and with native species, as Mr. Anderson described earlier.
But it's more of a more of a quality. There isn't a detailed plan of what the species would be, but it would be consistent with the tree technical manual that the city follows.
It would be consistent with that, as well as the approved plans from the Planning Entitlement Council reviewed last year.
Okay. And just last question is regarding the construction area. It'll be cordoned off with a fence during the construction phase, presumably?
That's correct. And
would there just be one large fence that would cordon off the entire area, or it's going to move based on what area is getting worked on at a given time? Will the whole area be fenced off while it's being reseeded, et cetera?
It would be so during the construction, it would be fenced primarily around the areas where construction is occurring. And then afterwards, as Mr. Anderson was noting, there would be, I believe, an orange fencing kind of place that is typical to what a lot of other park projects use. So not chain link fencing per se, right? Which is a little bit more obtrusive.
Good. That's all the questions I have, but other follow-up questions from other commissioners or Darren, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
No additional comments from me, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair, if you could.
Commissioner Kleinhaus, do you have an additional comment?
Yeah, how often do we have projects like this where a developer has a project that he wants to do and the city provides parkland or access to parkland for that project? And there is a PIO for a developer-related project rather than city-owned projects.
I can only speak from my experience with this, and maybe Tim and Garrett have additional information, but it hasn't happened very often in my experience. Of course, in this situation, their easement existed probably before that was dedicated parkland. But in other experiences, I just haven't come across this too often.
I would echo that sentiment. This isn't something that happens very often, probably for a good reason, because we don't usually want to have easements serving properties running across our parklands.
No, of course not. I'm just trying to figure out like how unique is this situation?
Yeah, it's I think I'd say it's probably one of the first ones that myself or any of the managers that I've worked with who've been here for 20 plus years have probably experienced. So not very common.
And can the staff recommendation or our recommendation include one is that the vacated easement be dedicated at the same time? Can we ask for something like that?
I believe Mr. Shimizu might be able to answer that question best.
So you can certainly add that to your motion. It just won't happen as soon as, say, March 6th, because that item is already agendized on the city council calendar. So you could direct staff to bring this to that. What you could add to your motion is that you direct staff to bring an ordinance to council rededicating this old vacated easement and dedicate that park as parkland.
It can't be done at the same time because I know how hard it is to bring anything to council, and this is not a huge project to give them. So I'm just wondering why, if this is a park improvement, we don't include, like if the motion is, please do it at the same time. You can still amend an agenda, no? I mean,
Yeah, just one additional thought. I don't know if this affects it, but that delay in getting onto council agendas is very real, especially if it's a discussion or action item. To dedicate that land, I don't think there'd be much opposition. It's the kind of thing I would assume would get, especially if it's fully abandoned and there's no other need for the property owners or anyone else, and we have unanimous recommendation from the PRC, it'd probably go on consent, which is far easier to get in on a timely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. No, I was thinking about something. I wasn't thinking about the wrong facts, or I was the right facts. So the vacating of the easement is happening not at the same time as this PIO. So what you could recommend is that you could recommend at the same time the easements are handled at council, which is going to be a few weeks later, that council also adopts an ordinance to rededicate that vacated space.
Darren, do you think it would be more appropriate for the commission to agendize the dedication of this area as parkland at another commission meeting? Because I'm not sure that is within the current agendized item.
Well, that's a good point too. I was going to suggest that it may behoove us to do now, because it would be easier to go with the easement change to city council, to have the dedication go concurrent with the easement change. But the point you just raised, let me reiterate it for our council here. Do you think this is doable, given that our agenda title doesn't talk about rededicating?
Yeah, so that's another issue, is just that this is, rededicating parkland is a very serious thing, even though this is a very maybe small area. So, to be cautious, the commission could always decide to quickly re-agendize this for its next meeting. Have a very brief discussion, take a vote, and Darren can similarly forward it on to council, especially on consent if it's unanimous from PRC to rededicate this little strip.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was thinking this would be something that would be uncontroversial enough that it would go through on consent, but I think it would be appropriate to agendize. So there is an opportunity for public comment on this in full transparency.
Chair, the more I think about it, I think that's the right move. It also gives staff an opportunity to just double check that there's no other obstacles or constraints that might inhibit us from such actions.
Yep.
Okay, so that was one question. So that's the answer. Okay, but the motivation for this question is I'm still looking for a real benefit for the city. So this second question then would be, can we ask as part of the motion for city council to require some public recreationally related benefits for the park, especially the skating rink that we want so much?
So I'm going to ask our planner here, has that process already gone to council? I think it has, right?
Yeah, so this project has already been approved. The only specific issue is related to this easement. So as a part of a traditional planning process, the only time we have any sort of public benefit is when we used to have a PC application, a planned community application. There is a specific relationship and correlation to public benefits with those types of projects. This one was not that. This was just a major architecture review application, as the applicant was identifying that they were doing, about 99% of all of our city's zoning code requirements, absent requiring or requesting a concession from state density bonus law. So I think incorporating a public benefit into this is not necessarily something that's, I'm not sure that it's maybe something that can be done.
Well, this is not this particular part of what they want to do, as you pointed out, hasn't happened in the last 25 years. So using standard planning processes is maybe inadequate to address this particular and unique situation where that for a development, even though it's been approved, and that's fine. I think we need housing. I think I'm not against this project by any means, but they have an impact on our park. And this is a park improvement that we're looking for. So I'm looking for the improvement. And so I think there's got to be some some level of improvement of the park to compensate for the project going through the park. And it doesn't have to do with the approval of the project itself and the housing. It has to do with impacts to the park. There's got to be, the park has to come out better than it started, in my opinion.
Thanks. Do any other commissioners have would any other commissioners like to comment on that point?
Well, I think Commissioner Kleinhaus brings up a very, very good point. So thank you very much for that. I'm not so sure that the timing works for us, but as a commission, we've certainly learned a lesson about timing and when to ask for things for the park, because I agree, it would be great to have the park have a benefit from this. But I also want to say that I understood, and I could be way wrong, that this project has been incredibly important to the council and to the city because of the housing that it provides. And so I'm kind of anxious to make sure that we don't really do anything to stop the approvals going. I guess they're already made going forward, but I do think you have a great point, and I think it's something that we should talk among ourselves, because there are things coming up that are going to be important to do for the parks. So thank you.
Just one thing, and then in the future, we should be notified on things like this before it's too late for us to be able to do anything about it. And council can potentially still do something about this, I think.
Any other comments? I'll make the comment that I appreciate the desire to try to get assistance in building our skate park, which is coming. I think if the developer wasn't aware of the skate park being planned there, now at least they have some information on it. But there's a plan in place, or there's plans in the works to update and expand the existing skate park at Greer Park. I do feel like this up. I feel like a lot of really great accommodations have been made to come up with a workable plan for the community that's working for us. I believe that given that there is an easement, I'm not sure that we have grounds to be pursuing this anyway. I think I appreciate that the developers has heard our concerns and they're interested in making a contribution to a future skate park. That's on the table for them, but that's their decision. But I think we should move forward at this point. Interested in the view of other commissioners.
Commissioner Kleinhaus.
I have a question. If we all support the proposal as it is, does that go on consent? Because I'd like to see the city to potentially discuss this.
I think in either regard, it ended up going on consent because it's already on the calendar, the March 6th date for city council. We would just be noted in the supplemental report that we put in saying if it wasn't unanimous or if the vote was no, whatever it ends up being, it'll be noted so council's aware.
So council does not revisit this, no matter what.
Say again.
So council does not revisit or
Unless
think
they
about
pulled
it.
the item. Yeah, unless they
Yeah.
decide to pull it.
Yeah, I don't think they'll want to do that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, then Darren, do you have could you put up the PIO for us to look at, please? Or the PIO that we would be recommending for adoption.
See the actual PIO? Yeah, we could share the staff report. Just take us a second if you'd rather see that.
Or does anyone need to see the PIO? It's in the report, which we can look at separately. So here's a draft motion. Recommending or not recommending city council to adopt the PIO. On balance, I think that there are a lot of benefits for the community. Also, the opportunity to expand our dedicated parkland footprint officially, if not de facto, because by de facto nothing will be really changing. But I will be supporting this a recommendation, and if I'll look to another commissioner to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that the Parks and Recreation Commission recommend that the City Council adopt a park improvement ordinance at Greer Park for the sewer line connection associated with the 2850 West Bay Shore Road development project.
Thank you. And second?
I second it.
And would you care to speak to your motion?
Yes, I mean, this is something that I think as Commissioner Cribb said, benefits the city overall. There are some opportunities here that have been discussed among the commission. And those are something that I hope that our developer would take into consideration. But we also don't want to be at the point where we're stopping something or sort of not necessarily stopping it, but offering some opposition to something that's going to benefit the city and our citizens. So for me, I think that as long as we have done our due diligence, is making sure that we're doing our best effort to make sure that everything is transparent to our users and stakeholders, and they know what's going on. We're communicating what the impact will be. I think that this is a good motion to pass.
Thank you. And the second, would you like to speak to it?
No, I agree with everything the maker of the motion said, and I'm anxious to see us move forward on this one.
Thank you. Any further comment by other commissioners?
Can I just ask, how do we have the easement come back to us? Do we need to have something in a motion, or you'll just have it on your to-do list?
For our future agendas planning? Yeah, that's the spot.
Okay, thank you.
So you're talking about the the dedication of the abandoned easement. Yeah, yes, that's something that the chair would work on with staff.
Thank you.
I can't presuppose who will be the chair when this might end up getting put on an agenda. And it sounds like there isn't that when if this were to get re-agendized or agendized on a future Parks and Rec Commission meeting and then go to City Council on consent, that would be after the date where this PIO recommendation would be going to City Council. But there's another date where the easements. What was the follow-up date that will be going to City Council?
Yeah, the easements would come to City Council shortly after. So I think it'd be mid-March, something like that.
Which may still be before
right.
The March Commission meeting. Okay, yeah. Thank you. But it's certainly something that I would enthusiastically support bringing into the commission. Any other comments? I believe this project has benefits to the community. That the housing project alone is something that obviously the community needs and council has supported and supports. The manner in which the applicant has worked with staff, I think, is praiseworthy in terms of getting it's certainly a benefit to move the easement, move the sewer line off of the soccer field. That's a benefit to the community, and having the support of the soccer and Little League communities is great. So I think this is a good project to support. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Greenfield.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemare.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs.
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Yes.
Commissioner Oche.
Yes, please.
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's spoken and presented this evening. Thank you for the work with the community on this, and look forward to having this go through smoothly.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, next up is our ad hoc committee and liaison updates. Who would like to share? Vice Chair, if you want to coordinate.
Commissioner Cribbs.
Oh, did you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Commissioner Cripps.
Okay, well, Darren talked about the public meeting for the Recreation Wellness Center happening on the 7th of March. And I think we could say from the ad hoc committee that we're pretty excited to talk with the community and hear their thoughts and what they are thinking about the vision. And so we're looking forward to that and glad to be at this stage, I think, of the game. So Darren, thank you very much. Kristen has been involved in helping along with some of the communications people, and we appreciate the word getting out the way it is through Facebook and everything else. And I did send a note over to Chris at the Youth Council because I'm really interested to invite the Youth Council and the Youth Advisory Board to take the survey, to talk about it and send us their thoughts because they're the future.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up question on that. Could you, what is the outreach that has been done and to the community on this?
So from
in terms of publicity and notification.
Jeff, from my perspective, what I've been tracking is something on Facebook, if you're in the city's Facebook page, and then on the city's website through the Facebook page. And then if you're signed up for the newsletters, then you receive an announcement as part of the newsletter. I believe that Mr. Shikata talked about it in his report to the council the other night. And I'm hopeful that, oh, and I guess the commissioners got a note today. So I'm hopeful that all of us will send it out to our networks as well, because I know we're pretty excited to have it as broad as possible in terms of a distribution. Many more than 100 people, maybe not coming to the meeting, but responding to the survey and all of that. I think it's really important. Does that help you? I don't have a whole list, but I'm sure that Kristen does.
The more specific question I have is the city has various listservs that people can sign up for, to get notifications on. And I'm wondering if which of these lists would fall under for which of these lists the notification would go out to. And wondering, Darren, if you can check to, you know, when in doubt, go more broadly with this. If something some of the lists sort of apply to this to increase awareness.
Yeah, thanks. I'll check in with our chief communications officer and make sure this gets sent out on all the city's options for next door and the other publicizing efforts that we regularly use for getting the word out.
Yeah,
I'm referring to there's specific groups and lists that people can sign up for city notifications.
I'll ask the same of the communications officer about that.
Great, thank you.
Can you send us the link to the survey as well? Or is it in the invitation? I haven't seen it.
It's not out yet. I believe it comes out, if I'm not mistaken, on the.
It comes out at the
7th, right?
the actual
Yeah.
event, yeah.
Oh,
Of the survey?
so how did people respond to it if it's not out yet?
So there's the community meeting.
There's two things.
In person, and then
Yeah.
for those that can't attend, the survey gets released that day, as I understand it.
Okay, and does the plan or like does it include any like preference for locations and stuff like that?
Location's one of the topics of the community meeting. Yeah.
Okay, and is anything on the other side of 101 still part of the discussion after it was removed from the EIR? The final EIR did not express that it can't be there because of significant unavoidable impacts?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so, you know, if I want to support this, if there's a proposal or an option that it would be on the other side of 101, it's both not consistent with the city's documents, but also there'll be opposition. So
Yeah.
we don't want to get there. We want to support it, you know?
Yeah.
So I just want to see that if you do outreach about location, it looks at locations this side of 101. I think Cumberly would be excellent. There's a few other places, but
So excuse me, so this is not an agendized
oh, I'm sorry.
subject for this evening, so I think we need to stick to updates from the ad hoc and appropriate follow-ups.
So I think that if I could, I'd add that the survey will go out. It'll stay open till a couple of maybe the first 2 weeks in April, or if it needs to be extended. And then at some point, the ad hoc would come back to hopefully the last meeting in March. The plan was, Darren, to have a discussion with the commission that would be on the agenda that the public would be obviously welcome to comment at, and we would have a chance to go through the whole thing as well. And then hopefully at that meeting, we would be able to make a recommendation to the city council and get on their agenda. So that's kind of the outline.
Great.
Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any comments from other members of the ad hoc?
Yes, I have an update about safe routes and
Sorry, I meant regarding this particular subject.
No, I think pretty much the reasons for one of the reasons for the community meeting is to obtain input and to build on from that. So I think that we're looking forward to the community meeting and hearing what people have to say, presenting what work we have done up to that point, and really listen to what the community has to say with it.
Thank you. So other ad hoc updates
I have an update about
or liaison updates, excuse me.
safe routes. I had a meeting with Rose with Safe Routes, and they're doing a lot of great work. And she gave me some updates in regards to, she had a conversation with a student, a high school student, who is interested in finding a place for a traffic garden, which is would be a place where youth could practice their cycling safety skills. And we had a cohort of kids who normally we do a bike rodeo at the elementary schools, and we had a cohort that missed out due to COVID. But there's a student who is looking into that they're working with. Also, she gave me an update that there's high schools with bike clubs that are doing some great work with bike repair and are also involved with conversations about the grade separation project. So again, getting our youth involved is very wonderful. And then the last thing that she mentioned was they are trying to complete a bike parking count, and it's on one of their wish lists of collaborating with us to try to finish this count that would take place at the parks, and trying to find out how many bikes are parked at certain times of days, the quality of facilities, the number of racks. And for them, it's something that when they get that information, there's funding every year, and it's something that can be actionable. So for them, it's very interesting. They have not been able to do that as of yet, but it's on a wish list. So as far as something for our commission and the parks to discuss and perhaps something that we could help with.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Cripps.
Thank you. In terms of the aquatics liaison role, We talked about the pool being closed next week and the communication going out to the community. I think everybody pretty much knows about it, but there will be a senior game swim meet on the 5th of March. Will be the last activity at the pool before it closes. And currently there are 75 swimmers signed up to swim. And so all of us should think about sunshine for Sunday. It's the swimming report.
Vice Mayor Stone, did you have a question, comment?
Yeah, no update to give, but just wanted to give my appreciation to Parks and Rec for your recommendation and Chair Greenfield for you staying up late with us last night as well and answering questions. So I just kind of appreciate the commission's work on all that and everything that you continue to do.
Thank you. Sorry, Vice Chair, back to you.
Chair, I do not see any more comments. Commissioner Freeman,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to feel this on, as Darren had mentioned, been working with Darren and Adam and making sure that we have been doing what we need to do for providing notification to our, the Little League, the soccer, and the others who would be impacted by the project that we talked about tonight. So I really appreciate Darren's team working to make sure that they were in communications with the folks that would be affected. And I think they appreciated that. They actually, I think it was last Thursday that Adam went out to the field and met with some of the soccer league folks to let them know what was going on and how this would impact them, and just trying to find out what their scheduling was so that we can try and be as transparent as possible and to make sure that we're keeping them in the loop about what's going on. I also met with Lam on the golf side, and one of the things we talked about was the status of the state water board. I think Commissioner Kleinhaus was interested in that. And he had reached out to, for follow-up. Lam had already, I guess, reached out to them about 2 or 3 months ago. And last week I reached out to them again, and they promptly responded that they don't have any updates at the moment, that they're focused on addressing some of the emergency permit applications resulting from the heavy storms. So hopefully we'll stay on top of that and follow up with them so we can keep that on track. Golf is actually being very much affected also by the recent storms. We needed water, so that might affect revenues a little bit. So he's staying on top of that as well.
So since we're talking about golf a little bit, is there a point that golf is going to come back and talk about the community programs that we asked about during the last report on finances?
Yeah, there's a couple different options. One, we could do that via department report and give a brief update that way. Or if you want a more robust discussion, we could have it agendized.
I just whatever way is convenient for you all, but I'd like to hear more than just the finances with the golf, what we're doing for the community.
Any other commissioners with comments? Chair, no further comments.
Thank you. I have some updates. The Urban Forestry Ad Hoc, Commissioner Kleinhaus and myself met with Peter Gollinger, Urban Forester, to get a general update on what's happening with the rollout of the changes to the tree protection ordinance that was passed last June. Can't remember when it was passed, last June, and there was a mailer that went out in the with the utilities bills recently on some of the updates, some notifications to the community, and a lot of stuff's moving along. Some things are a little bit behind in terms of updates to the new tree and landscape technical manual. And a lot of the slowdowns have been related to staffing issues within the urban forestry section. Part of the ordinance update included allocation or funding for 2.48 additional staff. I'm not sure why it wasn't 2.5, but so it's 2 full-time employees and some contract help or some part-time help. And all of these positions, I believe, have now been filled. So that's kind of clearing the way to move forward at a better pace. There was a meeting with the Foothills Nature Preserve partners and discussion on updates at the preserve, including updates regarding the pay station, which is now underway, and that seems to be going smoothly enough. Looking forward to getting updates on how many new passes, annual passes have been sold. I just purchased one, and I expect there would be an increase in sales on the annual passes now that weekdays are being visitors are being charged entrance fee on weekdays as well as weekends. Lots of work's been done with by the e-bike ad hoc. We met with Payback, Palo Alto, or the pedestrian and bike advisory committee prior to the city council meeting, and we also met a number of times preparing for the presentation to city council last night, which was successful. Want to thank all the members of the ad hoc for the great group effort we had, and working with staff. It was excellent and very helpful as usual. And thank you, Vice Mayor Stone, for your appreciation. There was effectively a pre-meeting with for the horizontal levee project, which will be coming to the commission next month or the following month, and making a practice of trying to meet with groups prior to coming to the commission for a meeting to make sure we're optimizing the experience for everyone, to make sure that something doesn't need to return to the commission or improve the chances that something won't need to return to the commission. So this pre-meeting may either be the chair meeting in advance, or making sure that the appropriate ad hoc or liaison has met with a presenter along with staff to help the presenter to give a first pass on comments and help the presenter of what might be appropriate for the commission to be focusing on, or to set an expectation of what's coming. So there's a similar meetings happen this month regarding the sewer projects as well. And I think that's all I got. Anyone else have something to add? If not, we will move on to the final discussion, which is any questions, comments, announcements, and also talking about our upcoming agenda. Vice Chair, I'll let you call on people for discussion if they have anything.
Are there any commissioners with items to discuss? Proposals for the agenda? No comments, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Darren, do you want to talk about what we have coming up next month?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. For March, one of the items, and this is one that's flexible, was the horizontal levee project park improvement ordinance. Staff was looking for March or April. We had talked about the tree protection ordinance as a possibility.
That'll be getting pushed out further.
Got it. Potentially this park dedication for the abandoned easement in Greer.
Yep.
And Chair, I wondered, and this will be something we can discuss at a meeting to talk about agenda planning, but possibly broaching the topic of retreat and work plan topics just to get the ball rolling as potentially an item. And then if I understand correct, I just want to double check with Commissioner Cribbs, the Wellness Recreation Center for April, right? For the presentation to the PRC, or was that supposed to be March?
It was supposed to be March.
Okay, then added that one to March, Chair.
I'm sorry, the Wellness Center will be March.
I had heard from Kristen April, and I must have misunderstood.
Well, why don't you check with her and see? So there may be reason. I haven't talked to her this week. She's been out of town, so.
I'll double check. So that one might be either or, perhaps.
Thanks. That was a question I had. Certainly regarding the retreat and work plan items, so that there was discussion. I had conversations with the city clerk, and maybe we talked about this last month. But in terms of the timing of things, at the April meeting, there'll be a reorganization meeting, potentially having new members of the commission beginning as well, and we'll be looking to have a retreat sometime in early May, and then and be working on our setting our priorities there, and set up ad hocs and liaison roles as we typically do at our retreat, and then at our May meeting, be looking to complete our work plan and approve it for council recommendation or for council approval. Any other comments? Vice Mayor? If there's nothing else, nothing further, I will call this meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing you in person next month.
Thank you.